already.
Comencem ja la sessió.
Com diu?
Comencem ja la sessió.
Okay. Okay, so good morning to everybody. It's in my watch, it is 10 o'clock. It's really a pleasure to be with you today for the beautiful launch of this extremely interesting conference with the program cluster, Advancing Youth and Women, Social Inclusion in the Mediterranean. Well, okay, from my part, it's just a few words to salute you, to welcome on the name of the European Institute of the Mediterranean, and to encourage you, because I think that this is an extremely interesting program, and it is very much timely, as you know, because we knew already which the main problems of the region in the Mediterranean were, because they existed. The lack of employment, and very often even the lack of employability of youth, young people, and the deficit of empowerment and participation and women in society, and specifically in the labor world, and therefore this we know were the main, well, some of the main problems in the region, along with many others, which were the result of these factors, because we know that this lack of women participation led to many other problems, even in governance and so on. And the lack of social and economic development, and the problems of a growing gap north and south of the Mediterranean, and even inside societies, both north and south of the Mediterranean. The point is that I was saying it is absolutely timely, because you know that with the pandemic of the coronavirus, all these phenomena have been exacerbated. And we know that the pandemic and its economic and social consequences have hit much harder, specifically these groups of people. And we know that many layers of society are in the risk of poverty, some of them even of extreme poverty, and the problems continue to be the same. And so this is why we have to tackle this lack of participation of women, this lack of employment opportunities, and even employability, which is even more problematic to solve. And this is why I think that this program is absolutely timely and necessary, and will bear good profit in my humble view, and as far as I know, in the assessment of most experts dealing with these questions. The pandemic has exacerbated this phenomenon. It has hit specifically hard young people looking for employment, and has put in light some of the maybe even especially difficult problems, because of course there had been many efforts to modernize the educational, well, to modernize, to change somehow, not sometimes specifically to modernize the educational system in most countries, but we know that this mismatch between the knowledge acquired and the skills necessary for the employments really being offered in the labor market, this mismatch, maybe it is even stronger, because the changements and in the educational systems and in the vocational education has not always been in the sense of filling this gap and this coming over this mismatch and offering really the young people and women, and especially, I would say, because they are hit from both sides, the young women, with the skills and the adequate education to integrate themselves in society through employment, decent and rewarding employment. And this is what it is all about. And I salute very much all the institutions participating in this cluster program. So I salute ACES Association from Italy, the Cyprus Chamber of Commerce and Industry from Cyprus, the CD MEditerRanean France, Natural Agricultural Research Center from Jordan, the Business Development Center from Jordan, the Business Women Forum from Palestine, a general agency for regional development in Tunisia, along with the other associates who will participate and who will help really to reach to the actual real beneficiaries, who should be young people and women in Mediterranean countries. And so, you will be working together in this next future, and we will be glad to accompany you, to be with you, to work with you from the European Institute of the Mediterranean. sociaL Viñana, managing director of the institute, was with you yesterday already, and so, and maybe probably you know from time before the institute, we've been working specifically in these fields by now for 30 years, but in recent times, specifically through many specific programs, you know, that we have been fostering the Euro-Mediterranean Women's Foundation. That's a network actually of many different women's associations. Then we've been working in the Euromesco network. We are in Euromesco 104 think tanks and research institutions from all Euro-Mediterranean area. And we are about to publish a study on assessing the job creation potential of social economy in the MENA region, which will be circulated and we will be delivered to you, because it's a joint study group by some of the institutes and research centers of the Euromesco network. Just a couple of weeks ago, we were conducting this Euromed Young Researchers Lab, because we thought that at Euromesco too often only very senior analysts and professionals were participating directly, and we wanted to give opportunities to young researchers and young professionals, and that's why we have encouraged them through this specific part of the Euromesco work, this young researchers lab. In the program InvestMed, we have been trying to foster sustainable business opportunities for young people and women in Egypt, Lebanon, in Tunisia, so where young people and women are, receive the tools to get, so it's you will find some inspiring maybe experiences, as this project is bound to capitalize, cluster is bound to capitalize on previous projects that have been already conducted. We have, and we are continuing to work with a project with the Anna Lindh Foundation, which is educating diversity and build citizenship. We have conducted these programs working with secondary schools in the area of Barcelona, and now we are working to replicate this experience with some partners in Belgium, in southern Spain, and in Morocco, working with young people and specifically intercultural knowledge, and conducting with them educational workshops, etc. And we have some other projects dealing with some specific problems of when things go wrong in interculturality. Connect is dealing with extremism in the Balkan areas, with 8 countries all from the Balkan areas participating, and then the MAGIC problem, which is Muslim women and communities against gender Islamophobia in society. So we've tried to be as useful as possible, and now we arrive to this other wonderful, I hope, project cluster, advancing youth and women social inclusion in the Mediterranean. And so I would say that the expectations are high, and the expectations are high because the problems to be tackled are enormous, and a solution and a way out of this is badly needed. And so I encourage you very much. I hope that good results will come out of this project. I thank, of course, the European Union and the Regione Autonoma Sardinia and any CBC MED program for supporting the project. And I wish you the best of results for good of the region. And we will be with you all the time, and we are at your disposal for any possible, we become friends, not only colleagues, and so we'll be there. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much. And now I guess that we go to the continuation of it, and I pass the keynote address of Johanna Weiss. Is that okay? Karina says yes, she's the ropes. So thank you very much, Karina. Okay, Karina, you conduct.
So I will now give the floor to Ms. Johanna Weiss. She's the program officer at the NECBC MED program at the branch office for the Western Mediterranean, based in Valencia.
Okay, so Johanna, you have the floor. We are really eager to hear what you have to say, because we feel very much close to our Valencia partners and in the NECBC MED branch office for Western Mediterranean.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Ms. Karina Melkonian for inviting me. I would like to thank her and all her team. And also, I would like to congratulate her because IEMed has obtained this fund from our program, NECBC MED. So just a few words about the program for those who are not familiar with this program. As we just mentioned, the managing authority is the region of Sardinia, and there is 2 supporting offices, one based in Valencia, Spain, for the west part of the Mediterranean, and another one based in Aqaba in south of Jordan, covering the east part of the program. So this program is one of the biggest program of cross-border cooperation in the Mediterranean, and it's one of the tools of the European neighborhood policy. So when we talk about the employment situation in the Mediterranean region, we usually have quite easily access to data regarding Southern European countries. But when it comes to data, reliable and up-to-date data of the MENA region, of the Middle East and North Africa, it's a bit more complicated. But fortunately, I found a recent report which was released this summer in August of this year, so it's quite new. And it has been done by the UN Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, together with the Regional Office for Arab States of the ILO, International Labour Organization. And this report shows that the Arab regions registers the highest level of unemployment in the world, especially for women and young people, with 14.3 million people unemployed prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. It also highlights a high level of employment in the informal sectors. Basically, 2/3 of the people working in Arab countries, they work in the informal sector. And this is partly due because of demographic shifts, because of political instability, and also because low level of fiscal and monetary stability. So when our program tackles the fight against poverty and fight against social exclusion, and especially we are focusing on women and young people regarding employment, we usually talk about the mismatch between what the labor market needs and what the job seekers have as skills. But this is only one part of the problem. I think there's a huge problem we have to tackle here, which is to move or switch more than 60% of the people working from the informal market to the formal market in order to guarantee better social rights and also better economic conditions for all. This is something like a really big challenge. And also there's another aspect which is related to supporting a good environment for job creation. And here I would like to address a message to all cluster partners, but also to associate partners. My first message is that we have been organizing so many trainings online, physical, so many coaching, mentoring programs, databases have been created and so on. And what we expect from a capitalization project such as Cluster is not only to repeat or to organize more trainings or to create a new database. What we expect from you is really to optimize from what has already been done. What we would say in French, mutualiser, you know, what we already have accomplished through previous funded projects. My second message, which goes to the pillar of what I call the executive agencies of employment policies. And in your consortium, especially associate partners, for example, you have the Direzione dei Lavori of Tuscany in Italy, you have also El Servei Públic d'Ocupació de Catalunya in Spain, or you also have other relevant entities such as the Youth Board of Cyprus or the Ministry of Youth in Jordan. So I send a message to them because they are mainly responsible to help, or they have a duty to try to improve the supporting environment for employment policy. So to sum up, when we tackle providing needs and women with marketable skills, we don't want only to focus on upskilling and reskilling, but most importantly, providing a supporting environment for employment policies in the Mediterranean region. So good luck and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jumana. Okay, dear panelists, Ms. Jumana Suez, Ambassador, and of course, cluster project partners and project associate partners, and dear audience, whoever is following this event on our YouTube channel, especially on the occasion of the first annual celebration of the Day of the Mediterranean by the UFM, I am with you today in my capacity as the cluster project manager, and it's an honor to moderate the panels. Before we begin, I would like to share some general instructions for a successful online event. First of all, I kindly ask the speakers to mute yourselves when you are not speaking, which you are already doing, but just for me to highlight it again and to keep in mind. Also, each speaker will have around 5 minutes maximum for their intervention, and participants will need to write down their questions or comments in the Q&A option of Zoom during the discussion session after each panel. We would also like to invite you to fill out a 1-minute anonymous evaluation form that will appear on your screen at the end of the event. I will remind you again when the time comes. I would like to take the chance to thank my colleagues Virginia and Patricia for organizing the agenda and the logistics for today. As you may know, we will have 2 panel discussions. We will start with the first one, which is about youth labor market impact of the COVID crisis, along with gender disparities, towards an integrated and multidimensional employment scheme. We will start with Gemma Obare Solduga, who is involved in so many things that I cannot present her in few words, but I would like to underline that she is head of Mediterranean Relations and European Network Service at the Directorate General for European and Mediterranean Affairs at the Government of Catalunya. Thank you, Gemma, for being with us. She will introduce very briefly the Mediterranean strategy of Catalunya, or what we call MedCat 2030. So Gemma, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Karina. Thank you very much for inviting us as Catalan government. That, as it has been said, we are engaged with the European Institute of Mediterranean Studies, who we are really working together on what is the Euro-Mediterranean cooperation from Barcelona, from Catalonia, and also because we are implicated in this project, as has been said. It's our employability direction is also it's part of this program, and we consider really relevant to collaborate also with the IEMed projects, because there is a big participation of Catalan organization, as Jumana knows very well. We have in these capitalization projects, I think there are 20% of the leaders of the projects from Catalonia, meaning IEMed, and also more than 7% of the 70% of the collaborators or of the partners in this project. So a lot of dynamics in Catalonia working on this program, and this is for us this possibility to share with you. And also because we consider as regions that we have some experience. So I want just to share with you 3-4 main ideas from our practice in developing this Mediterranean strategy. You know, the Catalan government, we plan for a Mediterranean strategy 2030 in the area. So we have a vision of certain subjects, among them youth and employability and women. And so our main challenge is every 4 years, make dynamic the implementation of politics, strategies, cooperating with our neighborhoods, with our neighbors in the south of the Mediterranean. This is not a very easy task. So we want to share in this specific subject of today some challenge. The first challenge is to have to see youth and employability as a shared challenge. Meaning we know very well that this is a challenge in the south area, but sometimes we don't link this with another reality, that it's also a very big or a strong challenge for our youth as southern Mediterranean countries. So our idea is also to make understand that our investment in the south in this question, it's also or need to be linked with our investment in young employability in the north. So this is one of the major issues that for us is important to translate to you, and also a question mark for the debate. Can we, as after even coronavirus, this is much more present in our agenda, can we talk about a Mediterranean youth employment problem or challenge? Do we share some common challenge that we can build on in our politics? And here it is a second reflection. When we are talking about vulnerability and employability, for us, it's very clear in Europe, in Catalonia, we have this kind of key groups that are vulnerable for the youth employability, meaning discapacity, young people, or even persons with some kind of problems. But for the youth reality in the south, this is a general vulnerability. taking all the aspects of a lot of sectors and not for some specific sector. This means that when we want to apply for a politic, sometimes we want a cooperation politic in order, second chance, for example, in the south of the Mediterranean, but we don't have a lot of projects sharing the same vulnerability target groups. So this is a reflection. A third reflection, also very quick, is the question of women. The young women are the main affected for young unemployability, and this is a fact, and I suppose, Jumana, in this report, it has been this very clear, and we had the opportunity with the Union for the Mediterranean and to did a very interesting seminar last January, it was, during the 25th anniversary, and I think she will explain to you some of the main results of this important side event that we organized together, in order to say that a lot of things is happening in the legislation that is not happening in the politics of to encourage women in the labor market. But a lot of things during the COVID were happening on the field in cities and regions, making it very interesting as a common or as a good practice. This is something that I will let Anna also to develop. And finally, transversality. For us, it's very important, the question of migration and labor market. And I want just to stress that these are two parts of the same coin. So if unemployment is one of the reasons for people to leave their region, their city, and to come to Europe. And it's also something that we are cooperating. Also, it's important to cooperate when, in a transversal way, when we are talking about migration programs, for example. And I want just to give you the example. Catalonia is engaged in a European project. It's a European AMIF migration project with Region Oriental in Morocco. The main topic of this project is minors and campaign to avoid illegal migration to Europe. But we are developing a cooperation with the Region Oriental in order not only to do this campaign to disencourage people, but also to make them knowing that they have opportunities and to reinforce the capacity of the local authorities there or regional authorities. So we are doing our best to link the two questions, but we don't find a lot of we find problems. We don't find a lot of programs dealing with these two questions together. So this is another issue. Finally, of course, we will like a more multi-level approach to this question, and we celebrate this cluster because this means that we can, after the results of this cluster, be much more lobby in favor of the place of actors, regional and local actors in the labor strategies of the Euro-Mediterranean. And so the main priority for us is what is good for young people or young Europeans is good for people on the southern Mediterranean. So inclusion should go through really shared strategies together. And as Ambassador Florenza said at the beginning, for us, our priority is investment, massive investment in education and vocational training. For us as Europeans, this is a must, jointly with mobility of young professionals and young people. So let's try to share this as a priority with our neighbors. Thank you very much. I don't know, 5 minutes, but it's a lot of ideas. Thank you, Karina.
Thank you, Gemma, for your very important reflections. I will now give the floor to Vito Intini. Vito is Regional Lead Economist and Inclusive Growth Team Leader at the UNDP in the Arab region. And he will share with us some critical aspects on youth and women's labor markets in the region. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Karina. Hello, Excellencies, colleagues. I hope you can see my screen. I assume you can. Okay, yes. Very good. So let me start. I mean, I was given a very impossible task to present all what we know and our analysis in 5 minutes. So let me jump straight into the crux of the matter. First, the background. The structural aspects that we see in the Arab Mediterranean region based on labor market issues and dynamics. Female labor force participation rate in the region is estimated around 19% compared to 74% of male labor force participation rate. Unemployment rate is estimated around 21% in 2021, compared to a man's unemployment rate of around 8%. Women are in the region concentrated in the care work. In the Middle East in particular, based on the data that we have, almost 53% of all care workers are women. Of course, this adds to the unpaired care work we all know about. That is also an additional burden for women, particularly in their houses and the households. Estimated around half of women in the region, in the Arab Mediterranean region, are informally employed. This is a bit of the background. When we look at access to finance, particularly for women, we see on the left-hand side of this slide that in the broader Arab region, there is a big discrepancy, a gap between women and men in terms of access to bank accounts. And when it comes to access to emergency funds, that you can see here on the right-hand side, few countries in the region still report a sizable gap, among the highest gaps between men and women in the world. Additional pre-existing challenges were related to particularly young workers and unemployed. The unemployment rate in the region again was over 25%, so almost double the global average. And when it comes to women unemployment for youth in particular, we are estimating over 50% compared to over 20% for youth males. This is a big discrepancy. And when we look at the youth not in education, employment, and training, it is estimated around over 26% based on the latest data in the region that I was referring to. Again, for women, the need rates are higher, around almost 38% on average, compared to 16% for youth males. The vast majority of young workers, almost 87%, are estimated to work in the informal employment. I always use the word estimate because this depends on the number of labor force surveys that are available depending on countries and depending also on the latest available data. So here you can see that 88% of youth male workers are in informal employment, whereas an estimated 74% are youth females. And of course, there is a big range between countries in the Arab Mediterranean region, as you can see. There have been, this has been the result of deteriorating labor market conditions that are results of many factors: public sector downsizing that started in the 90s, and also limited ability of the private sector to create a decent and productive jobs, particularly in the formal sector. Based on our studies, youth that enter the labor market in the informal sector rarely have more difficulty in transitioning to the formal employment. This is very often regardless of the education and experience that they acquire. Informal employment overall is almost 2/3 of workers in the region. This leaves the informal workers particularly vulnerable to shocks, including COVID-19. Informality is very pervasive in agriculture, and also, of course, informality does not give access to social insurance systems that will cover sickness, work injury, invalidity, disability, maternity, and old age benefits, and so on and so forth. The exclusion of those benefits are particularly for the self-employed, casual, temporary, domestic workers that we have noticed. And of course, among all of these, women and youth tend to be highly represented in those categories. Low coverage of workers in the social insurance system. There was a survey that was conducted a few years ago. Here you can see divided by male and female respondents. And here you can see the main reasons of why workers are not included in social insurance and they are not covered. In some cases, is the employer that refused to insure the worker. Here around 10% for men and 16% for women. There is no interest, and in this case, it can be many reasons. Half of male respondents say so, whereas 39% of women said the same. And also, there are many other reasons, as you can see. As a result of this, women are very likely to be excluded by this insurance sector because of their representation in some of the sectors that are exposed both to the vulnerability and the pandemic in particular. Of course, all in all, the pandemic has affected the informal sector because of most of the service sector in the region, in many countries in the region, have been exposed to the pandemic, and also because of the nature of their employment, meaning that many of workers could not use other modalities of work, like working from home, respecting social distances, because in the informal sector, these modalities are more difficult to be implemented. So there is a double burden on informal workers, and on women, I will say a triple burden that expose them more disproportionately compared to other types of work. Using, again, the latest data available here, we can see the impact on the labor force, employment and unemployment by gender and also by age groups. And here you can see that youth have been disproportionately affected across the board in terms of employment, labor force, and unemployment. This for the North African region, very similar trends we can see for the Middle Eastern region as well. Now, looking at the survey that was conducted on youth in particular, here we can say that a high proportion of youth who are considering emigrating from the region are considering doing that for economic reasons as a first reason for that. But also, interestingly, when we ask questions related to what kind of reforms will be needed in the next 10 years in order for the region to progress, 3 of the top 10 responses are related to the economic conditions. Create new well-paying jobs is number 2, after cracking down on corruption. Diversifying Arab economies away from oil. This is a very interesting answer, because it means that there is an awareness of the importance of economic diversification in the long term among the youth, and also making a better business environment as in the top 10. Another interesting result is related of this survey is related to indebtedness of the youth. Here you can see trends from 2015 to 2020. There's been more than doubling of the level of indebtedness between among the Arab youth. And the main reason that you can see on the right-hand side of this level of increased level of indebtedness is related to student loans. So youth is investing on their asset, human capital, but also car loans, medical bills. This is an interesting result, home mortgage, and so on and so forth. In terms of propension to work, prefer future career, there is still preference for public sector work, as you can see here at the bottom of the slide, although decreasing compared to the previous year. But also in the private sector, there is a decrease in terms of preferences. What is interesting that working on your own, self-employment, or working for the family has registered an increase in trend. I will not dwell further because there is limited time, but basically here are some evidence or results that have been conducted in the region by different organizations, where basically we can quantify the impact on women in particular of the COVID crisis, but also other studies that were particularly looking to the informal workers and their ability to work from home during the lockdown that we at UNDP have conducted. In terms of policies, very quickly that have been enacted,
Vito, we are not able to hear you anymore. I don't know if the connection was lost, but we can still see the presentation. Hello? Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, there has
Yes.
been probably an internet connection problem.
Just Vito, if you can make it a bit short at this point. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Yes, sure.
Thank
so
you.
I'm wrapping up right now as we speak.
I know it's very difficult, but
so, yeah,
thank you.
In terms of policy enacted, as you can see, I was saying that a number of policies, measures have been enacted, including subsidies for utilities, waivers and payments, deferrals for a number of expenses, direct cash support. There have been specific measures for women, particularly in sectors where women are more concentrated, and those measures were taken in Egypt, Morocco, State of Palestine, Syria. Investment in education, like e-commerce and other measures have been taken in Egypt. Flexible employment measures that I was referring to in the case of Tunisia, and cash assistance and credit to protect women in the State of Palestine and Tunisia as well. In terms of short term, of course, we all know that minimizing job losses and protecting health and well-being of workers will be important. Social insurance, access to social insurance, using, for instance, linking those benefits to other immediate benefits like childcare and other services will be important as we move forward, but also conducting parametric reforms, particularly for female and youth workers, and data collection will be critical. I will not dwell further, but it's important that women's mobility aspects are tackled in the post-pandemic, and also increased labor protection, in particular for women that are exposed to high-risk sectors, and also to have a promote further access to financial services for women, but also for youth, promote inheritance rights wherever there is a chance, and also banning discrimination in hiring, promotion, dismissal to retain women in employment would be important. Flexible working arrangement is a critical aspect as we move forward, and better data collection disaggregated by gender and age would be important. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Vito. You received many messages in the chat box thanking you for the presentation and asking you, our project partners, if you can share the presentation with us. If it's possible, it would be really useful.
Okay.
You also have a question that will be discussed during the discussion session at the end of the panel by Johannes. Okay, I will now give the floor to Anna Dorangricia. She is the Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Expert at the Secretariat of the Union for the Mediterranean. Anna, what could you share with us about women economic inclusion in the region in a few minutes?
Thank you very much, Karina. Thanks for the invitation. I'm pleased to be here with a lot of friends and colleagues. First of all, Jumana and Gemma, thanks a lot for mentioning the side event that we organized last year in November in the framework of the Youth Farm Women Conference, where there was a specific focus on gender equality policy at local level. And glad to be also with UNDP, OECD, GIZ, because we are all working together specifically on women economic empowerment. I have to say that based on the previous interventions, the picture is quite, let's say, pessimistic. We have been focused on challenges, on problems, on very, very impressive data shared by Vito. Thanks a lot for it. And I would just mention a last figure, and then I will maybe focus on what can be done in terms of how to overcome this kind of challenge. In the recent report published by the United Nations Women in the Arab region on the impact of COVID-19 crisis recovery policies adopted by the countries in the Arab region in terms of women economic empowerment, there was, a couple of figures that can give an idea why the crisis, and COVID-19 is not an exception, is never gender neutral. 90% of the recovery policies in terms of spending is focused on economic recovery, meaning supporting major unemployment or support to small and medium enterprises. Well, out of these 90%, only 6, I'm not talking 16 or 60, 6% has taken the gender perspective into account. This means that we are in a situation where, especially in the MENA region, we have women with an employment rate, as mentioned also from Vito, who represent 20% of the workforce, but they will bear 40% of the job losses in the region. And based on the forecast on the economic impact of these recovery policies that foresee to create a new 15 million of jobs, only 80% will be for women. This means that basically women bear twice their share of job loss in the region, and also because they are not going to benefit from social protection measures. That is something that also Vito was mentioning. So basically, when we talk about the challenge in the Mediterranean region for job creation, and we think about women, we have to think about like a double burden. But having said that, the situation is not maybe so, let's say, catastrophic, I could say. From one side, there is a big progress in terms of improving the legal frameworks to support the women economic empowerment in the region. Meaning that in terms of social rights, economic rights, countries are adopting new legislative frameworks. Now, the challenge, as Gemma was mentioning, is how to translate this legal framework in policies, strategies, and also financial commitment, because we can also adopt strategy, but we are not going to mobilize funds to implement this strategy. We are not going to overcome the challenge. So in this framework, which is the potential contribution of the Union for Mediterranean. The agenda is quite wide, and women economic empowerment is one of our main priority, both in terms of job creation, but also to support women entrepreneurship. And we are working on a monitoring mechanism gathering gender disaggregated data. And I have to say that unfortunately, even if we have a full commitment from the MENA region who shared their country progress report on gender equality and women empowerment this year, there is a lot of lack, there is a big lack of quantitative and qualitative data, especially when we refer to informal employment. And as we saw, women and young people are basically concentrated in the informal sector. What we are going to do with this monitoring exercise, we are drafting, and hopefully we will be able to share it by the end of this year, a regional progress report on women empowerment, and not only in terms of analysis of data, but also in terms of policy recommendations that hopefully can be adopted next year during the Ministerial Conference on Women, where we will advocate the 42 UFM member states to adopt legal commitment and financial commitment to improve the women economic empowerment in terms of job creation. But not only, the UFM is working also in terms of, from a thematic perspective on gender economic empowerment. My colleague Alessandra Sensi, who is working on blue economy and green economy, unfortunately cannot be here today, but she asked me to share the reference to the last ministerial declaration on blue economy and climate change, where there is a specific focus on job creation in blue and green economy and in all the adaptation and mitigation policies to fight the climate change. And as you know, maybe in the last COP26, gender was one of the focus of the debate at COP26 in Glasgow, and more specifically on the need to invest from a gender perspective when we talk about climate finance. And also in this case, financial commitment, gender budgeting are useful tools to work on it. Just to close my intervention and to give the floor to the other speakers, I wanted just to mention a couple of projects where we are working on. Last year, thanks to the GIZ support, we launched a grant scheme for employment, and we received more than 100 applications from the civil society organization working on job creation from the MENA region. And finally, we funded 4 projects. One of these, that it's called Flowers and cover Morocco and Tunisia, is targeting more than 300 women in order to support them to develop their business, especially in rural areas. But the project will work on let's say, youth and women perspective, because the idea is to use local young trainers to support these women group producers in order to improve their access to the market. And the last element that I want to mention is that when we talk about job creation and women, there is an additional layer that is the disability. When we talk about women and women disability, the access to the labor market is even more challenging. In this case, we will launch in January a new project in Morocco, focused on access on tourist sector for women with disability. So we, from one side, we try to focus on political level. From the other side, we try to push and to support project implementation. And take into account the focus of cluster project, I think we will be happy from our side to work on in cooperation with you and to see which kind of synergy to better capitalize your project we can create. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Anna. It was a pleasure for me to meet you and listen to you. And we have a comment by Alessandro, one of our project partners from Arches Association. He's saying that being a capitalization project which will deliver policy action plans, we will be more than pleased to receive the policy recommendations announced by Ms. Dorangricia. So thank you. I will now pass the floor to Johannes Laeple. He is the German Development Cooperation representative to the UFM, and he will be briefly unpacking GIZ's integrated approach to employment promotion in the region. So Johannes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Karina. I never said briefly, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. I would quickly like to investigate a bit more what it means to follow an integrated or multidimensional approach to employment promotion, because this is one of the concepts that the cluster project is based on. And by the way, I would like to I'm really impressed how you came up with that abbreviation from the title of the project. I think it was very creative and very well done. So GIZ is currently running over 50 projects across the southern and eastern Mediterranean that work on employment promotion. And for the German Development Corporation, this work has always been based on an integrated approach in which 3 sides of employment promotion are addressed. The demand side of labor, meaning the creation of employment opportunities through a focus on the private sector, the supply side of labor, meaning basically to prepare people for the job market and to equip job seekers with the needed skills, and the matching between the two, in particular the development of active labor market policies and the establishment of public employment services. Now, when we look at the southern Mediterranean region, and especially now after the COVID pandemic and after all the job destruction that came with it, many believe that we should now really focus on the demand side of labor. It's basically saying we do have a large labor force, we are just now missing the jobs. And it's true, of course, that especially women, as we have heard in the region, often work in sectors that were especially affected by the pandemic, like manufacturing and services. And the same is true for young people, because they are more often employed part-time and are generally much more likely to lose their jobs than their more experienced co-workers. But we have heard already today that we're also dealing with a huge employability problem in the region. And in fact, more than 32% of enterprises in some southern Mediterranean countries have said that the lack of skills of job seekers is the major constraint to hiring them. And here as well, the COVID pandemic has created huge additional problems, because the COVID pandemic meant for many young people that for almost 2 years now, they could not have proper access to education and training. And this is especially true for vocational training, where in many cases, TVET institutions, teachers and students lack the necessary skills and the resources and the equipment to continue TVET remotely. And there was an ILO, UNESCO and World Bank survey last year that suggests that almost 95% of TVET centers in the MENA region had to completely stop their activities during the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's great to see that the cluster project really focuses on TVET and needs, but also in addition follows an integrated approach by which TVET institutions, SMEs, and public institutions and policymakers are connected. From the GIZ experience, we have also experienced some challenges that come with an integrated approach, because dealing with a large number of stakeholders is very ambitious and complex. And that's why many activities focus often only on the private sector, or only on the supply side of labor, or only on the matching side. And if these activities are not coordinated, then many measures will lack effectiveness, because of course, if it doesn't make sense to stimulate the economy or sort of support specific industries, if we are lacking the workforce that can actually do the specific jobs that these industries require, and vice versa, it doesn't really make sense to train welders or carpenters if there are no jobs available for them. So it's very important from our experience to first talk to the private sector to see what kind of jobs they really need, and then enable especially less privileged and vulnerable groups to gain access to these particular jobs. So it's, what I'm saying is it needs to be ensured that vocational training is in line with the real workplace demands of employers, and that TVET is really tailored to the needs of the labor market. And the cluster project's focus on sustainable economy sectors is quite promising in this respect, since these are certainly future priority sectors. And another last point, another challenge that comes with an integrated approach is that you need to deal with a large and broad number of actors and stakeholders. And these are actors that are not necessarily used to talking to each other. So you have academic institutions, private sector and public institutions, and they do not always have an existing and effective multi-stakeholder dialogue ongoing. And even within governments, you have the Ministry of Economics, for instance, that does not necessarily talk to the Ministry of Education and so on and so forth. But this communication really needs to happen under these activities, and it needs to be established through projects like these. So to just conclude quickly, in my opinion, the multi-actor, multi-dimensional and integrated approach that the cluster project is pursuing will probably not come without challenges, but I believe it is absolutely essential from our own experience in GIZ. So thank you, Carina, and back to you.
Thank you, Johannes. You did a great job of presenting the 50 projects on employment promotion that is implemented by GIZ in 5 minutes. So thank you. I will now pass the floor to Yegane Foruheshwar. Yegane is researcher at the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association, and she will be presenting COVID and sustainable entrepreneurship in the Southern Mediterranean region. We can see your screen perfectly, Yegane.
Okay. Now hopefully you can hear me as well.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your invitation. It's an honor to be among this distinguished panel. A few words. I'm a researcher at your Mediterranean Economists Association, EMEA, which is an independent research institution bridging research and actions and policy recommendations. Okay, let me start briefly because we only have 5 minutes. First, I want to focus on the impact of COVID-19 on different aspects that the cluster project is focusing on. The first one is the impact on youth. As it was discussed before, considerable risks youth are facing increasing risks in terms of education, as social distancing measures has affected the functioning of the universities in a very short time, and people were not really prepared for it. And in terms of employment prospects and career path, and also mental health, which is less discussed, also again because of these social distancing measures and the disposable income. So these are the aspects highlighted in many studies, including OECD ones. I just cite one, but there are many. In terms of the impact of COVID-19 on women, we observe as that the pre-existing inequalities has been deepened in terms of unpaid domestic work, also wage gap, and also in terms of even domestic violence incidents that women are more often subject to them. We see that the women's situation is as exacerbated because of COVID. In the impact on startups, we observe that there's a reduction in the number of startup creations, and also the survival of the startups is even more challenging in the post-COVID era. And their growth is limited in many cases. Not all, but in many sectors, the growth prospects is limited because of the global crisis that we are facing right now. And the impact on the green transition, although we observe a widespread calls for green recovery and also the awareness on the importance of tackling climate change and moving towards a greener economy, most countries' stimulus packages have been environmentally harmful. As it was mentioned before, the countries are mostly focused on economic recovery rather than the green transition. Within the Mediterranean regions, we observe a devastating impact of COVID-19, like everywhere else, the loss of demand and revenue. At the same time, we observe a rapid digitalization at the global level. So this digitalization can create opportunities in many sectors because it facilitates market access for a lot of entrepreneurs at a lower cost. They can reach bigger markets. However, it can also be regarded as a threat because of the increasing competition and mainly with big actors that probably startups cannot survive. And in some sectors, the digitalization can be a threat, like by digital piracy and so on. So digitalization has a positive impact, but then it needs to be studied case by case. Within the South Mediterranean region, we have a demographic structure, which is youth, which is very young. You have high proportion of youth in the population. And at the same time, the youth unemployment rate is among the highest in the world, as was mentioned in the first presentation. And the economic and we observe economic and political instability. In case of Lebanon, for instance, we observe this multiple crisis of banking and currency crisis. At the same time, COVID, the Beirut blast, and this is like a global situation. It's not very favorable for entrepreneurs and green entrepreneurs. In Tunisia as well, we observe these political changes, and we have to see how it will turn out. And in terms of for the sustainable entrepreneurship, so we observe different challenges because the environment post-COVID is very hostile, even for established enterprises. So imagine for the startups, it's even worse. And also we need to take into account of the fiscal constraints and that this stimulus packages has increased the government indebtedness in many countries and all over the world, and that limits the government resources to be allocated to green and blue economy and for even youth in the future. In terms of opportunities, we observe also this increasing awareness about future challenges and future crises, especially the climate crisis that we are facing. So we observe increasing demand for green assets. We have in the EU the green asset ratio requirements by banks, and so there are new opportunities for finances to for the green economy. And at the same time, we observe a rise in awareness on the importance of sustainable entrepreneurship. And we observe also new forms of finance, rise of crowdfunding as a new source of finance. And there was this crowdfunding bill in Tunisia that was passed by the parliament in August 2020. So pretty new. In many southern countries, this crowdfunding scheme is not allowed by by law, but it is on its way. So I think in terms of financing opportunities, green entrepreneurs have good chances. So I want to conclude briefly that these are essential post-pandemic actions to support startups because startups are widely affected by the pandemic. At the same time, they are a source of job creation for the new generations, and for in the upcoming years, we need to support startups to ensure a number of jobs created in the years to come. At the same time, we need to support the most affected people or population, and women and youth are among the most vulnerable and affected by the pandemic. So it's essential to tackle that. And also the lowering the probability of future shocks. The climate change and environmental challenges, they present significant threats to the societies worldwide. And the pandemic raised this awareness on the importance of tackling these threats as soon as possible. And the main focus on resilience, building resilient societies and economies is in the agenda of most countries. And this has accelerated the green transition. So all this is said to highlight the importance and how timely is the cluster project at this time. And for EMEA, we also highlight we are also aware of these challenges and these important actions to be taken in the current times. And we are currently applying 2 projects, Investment and Crack for Med, that focus on youth and women by capacity building and providing green and blue entrepreneurs with fundings and training, and also culture and creative industries. So these are the 3 main areas of focus on these 2 projects carried out by EMEA. So thank you very much for your attention. These are the main points I wanted to shed light on. Thank you.
Thank you, Yegane, for this great overview and for also introducing InvestMed project, of which IEMed is one of the project partners. I will now give the floor to the last speaker of the first panel, Iman Wardani. Iman is Vice Mayor of Sousse and Head of Partnerships of Dares, Tunisia, as part of IEMed. Iman, what could you share with us from your experience? I know right now the timing is very short and we cannot really go in depth into the topic, but how could blue solidarity economy contribute to job creation in the Mediterranean?
Thank you, Karina. Hello, good morning, everyone. So first, I would like to express my proudness and my happiness to participate in this panel. Especially, I heard in the majority of interventions that Tunisia is included in many projects. So I would also thank NECBC for the invitation and to give me the opportunity to present our program, a program with different projects. I'm very glad to see Sir Garibi with us because he's part of one of our projects. So I will share with you my screen, and I will be brief, and I will present you the blue solidarity economy, the new concept that can be a way to create jobs and to ensure the social and economic integration of especially women and youth. But first, I would like, and it's important to remind what is a blue solidarity economy. So it's a new concept developed by IEMed, that is an European cooperation that boosts the economy, the social and solidarity economy in the Mediterranean region. And as you know, donc, the blue economy is the maritime variation of green economy. Then the idea is to organize the meeting between solidarity and social economy and the blue economy that can open wide and simultaneous fields of experimentation and inter-cooperation. So what is this concept? What is the system? So we implemented a global system that includes first a cluster of Mediterranean solidarity, a blue solidarity economy. We created already the association of prefiguration of this cluster, and then we have the forum that is our big events. Donc the forum MEDEX that will held the next this 26th and the 27th of this November in Sousse. It is organized in partnership with the municipality of Sousse and many other partners. So I will back to this point, but I would continue to present you the system. Then we have programs, so social, as you know, social and environmental innovation at the service of coastal area, and the object is to reinforce their biodiversity and attractiveness, like alternative tourism, circular economy, etc., etc. And then our ambition is to create a label that's called Solidarity Blue Territories. This label will be implemented in 2013 in a whole process by MEDEPS to recognize and to encourage and inspire cities to develop this concept in their territories. So for this, we developed and we implement a roadmap, and the forum MEDEPS 2021 will be the launching event of this strategic process. So for the forum, the aim is first to have a roadmap, a regional roadmap about blue solidarity economy. The specific aims is to engage all stakeholders implicated in solidarity and social economy and the blue economy, and to appropriate this roadmap. And then to decline priority areas and to have concrete projects in this field. So then we have the politic declaration that will be present during the forum, and then fix the priority axis, and then we, as I said, to present the roadmap, Mediterranean roadmap of blue solidarity economy. And then we are working on a governance, because actually with the forum, we implemented already a governance, but this governance should be work in the whole process till the first big event in 2023, in the occasion of the global social economy forum that will be held in Dakar, and then to continue to 2030. So, and then the whole portage of this structure will be as can I say, do with the MEDEPS association, the MEDEPS cluster. So I think I present the essential of our works as a whole process, a global process implemented for the Mediterranean, launched from Tunisia to, after that, to implement priorities area, priorities access, and this priority, it will be, they will be a way to create new jobs, new blue jobs, new solidarity jobs for everyone, especially for women and youth. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Iman, for this great presentation of this new concept and field of action of blue solidarity economy. We will now dedicate some short time for the discussion. So when typing your comments or questions, could I also ask you to very briefly introduce yourselves? We already have a question from Johannes Laeple during the presentation by Vito Intini. So Johannes is asking you, Mr. Vito, what are some of the reasons why workers might not be interested in having social security? If you could answer briefly.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. And well, I try to cover very quickly some of the reasons. One underlying reason is the informality, the informal economy. Because of course, a lot of informal workers do not have the required coverage for many of the aspects related to social insurance and coverage. But also related to that is also the fact that when the youth labor force enter the labor market, they are willing to, and of course, obliged to accept jobs that are not necessarily including all the required coverage and also additional services, including insurance, social insurance aspects, and they tend to be protected in that situation because there is limited social mobility, limited market dynamics, particularly related to the private sector, and there is also some of the let's say share of the youth that are in the need basically not in education, employment, or training activities, are waiting for a better job offer or conditions, and therefore are waiting for better opportunities. But this can take time, because compared to other regions around the world, the market dynamics tend to be not to be in favor of youth mobility. So there are concurring factors, but definitely, I mean, those are some key entry points aspects that we hope we can also work on together through this project as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vito, and thank you for this very fruitful exchange. We will now pass to the second panel on addressing labor demand-supply mismatch through sustainable economy sectors by reskilling and upskilling youth and women. This panel will be introduced by Emmanuel Rour, Neighborhood Coordinator at the International Relations Unit at DG Employment. First of all, thank you, Emmanuel, and welcome to this event. You will be giving us a quick overview of the EU sectoral policy dialogue on employment and social affairs in the region. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Karina, and good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased on behalf of the Director General Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion of the European Commission to attend this second panel on reskilling and upskilling youth and women. Many thanks to IEMed for the invitation, and this project is very timely because, as recalled by Ambassador Senan in his introduction, the issues of employability and skills have become even more crucial than ever in the context of the current COVID-19 pandemic, which, and it was very well presented by the previous speakers, had a particularly strong impact on the most vulnerable, especially youth and women. For the European Commission, it's very clear that if we want to build back better, promoting lifelong learning and skills development are key to address the changes and challenges brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we have seen, yet mismatches and shortages in skills are increasing, while a large number of people are unemployed or at risk of unemployment. So as you said, Karina, I would like to say a few words on the EU sectoral policy dialogue on employment and social affairs in the region by highlighting some of the key EU initiatives on skills, as well as the new framework for the strategic partnership the EU has with the Southern neighborhood. For DG Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion at regional level, we are mainly working within the within the Union for the Mediterranean, and I will explain also what our work is about within the UFM. So the European Pact for Skills, adopted November last year, promotes joint actions to maximize the impact of investing in promoting existing skills, the upskilling and training in new skills, the reskilling. It calls on industry, employers, social partners, chambers of commerce, public authorities, education and training providers, and employment agencies to work together and make a clear commitment to invest in training. The Pact celebrated its first birthday last week, and 450 organizations have pledged to provide the right skills for 1.5 million people, notably through the first 5 partnerships in sectors like automotive, microelectronics, aerospace and defense, offshore renewable energy, and shipbuilding and maritime technology. Up and reskilling are also central in the action plan on the European Pillar of Social Rights adopted last 4th of March by the European Commission. It turns into principles the pillar into actions with a strong ambition and a strong focus on jobs and skills, with 3 headline targets to be achieved by 2030, respectively on jobs, skills, and poverty reduction. And for skills and equality, the target is at least 60% adults taking part in training every year. And this action plan has been endorsed at the highest level by the heads of state and government at the social summit held in Porto last May. I would like also to mention the State of the European Union speech of the European Commission's President von der Leyen, highlighting the need to invest strongly in digital skills, but also putting the spotlight on the young generation, notably the most vulnerable, with a new program called the ALMA for Aim, Learn, Master, Achieve, to support young people who are not in education, employment, or training. And she announced also the European Year on Youth for next year. So we are reflecting these priorities and initiatives in our cooperation with the Southern neighborhood. And as you know, there is a new framework for this strategic partnership between the EU and the Southern neighborhood, with a new agenda for the Mediterranean adopted last February by the European Commission. There are 5 key pillars, and 2 pillars are relevant for our today discussions. The first pillar is on human development. The human development approach is key in the new agenda, with a strong focus on young people, and notably the most vulnerable. Youth and unemployment, skills mismatches, lack of opportunities, and brain drain are recognized as major challenges in the region. And the new agenda confirms that up and reskilling are fully part of the recovery strategies. So with the support of the European Training Foundation, cooperation in the anticipation of skills and lifelong learning strategies, skills and capacity development will be implemented in the Mediterranean region. The pillar related to resilience, prosperity, and digital transition is also relevant for our discussions, because there is a focus on inclusive economies to support systems and recovery strategies. And I would like to mention some of the objectives: to create perspectives for young people, decent employment for all, and prevention of brain drain are highlighted. To increase women's labor market participation and their economic empowerment, and to focus on the transition from informal to formal economy. And in this regard, the role of skills policies for all in view of supporting formalizations is recalled in the new agenda. As I said, for DG Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion, we are working at regional level within the Union for the Mediterranean. We co-chair the UFM regional platform on employment and labor, which gathers the 42 UFM member states ministries of labor. Within this sectoral dialogue, we have notably launched this year a monitoring process with indicators, with the support of the European Training Foundation and also of the EMEA. We have to date 11 UFM member states volunteering to be part of this monitoring process. And this monitoring is organized around 4 pillars, and I would like to highlight two pillars. The pillar 3, which is on building inclusive labor markets to integrate vulnerable groups, and the pillar 4 on quality education systems and skills and employability. To make a parallel with what Anna from UFM said, because they have launched also monitoring on gender. This is the same approach. So we want to have data in order to build the policy recommendations. I would like to conclude by saying that we will use these discussions of today, and thanks again for inviting us, because we are preparing the 5th UFM Ministerial on Employment and Labor, and the agreed focus is on employment and employability of the most vulnerable, especially youth and women. So this 5th UFM Ministerial on Employment and Labor should be held in spring next year. So I will stop there. Many thanks for your attention, and I give back the floor to you, Karina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for this great overview of the EU's new agenda on the Mediterranean. I will now give the floor to Gaëlle Ferrand. Gaëlle is economist and gender specialist at the OECD. And her intervention will be about developing girls' digital skills for an inclusive economic recovery in the Southern Mediterranean countries. So Gaëlle, we are all ears.
Great, thank you, Karina. Can you hear me well and see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
That's great, thank you. First of all, let me congratulate you again for this new project that it seems very, very insightful for the whole region. And we are really looking forward for the results, and also strengthening the collaboration with the OECD. And of course, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting us and providing us the opportunity to participate in this second panel. Before to discuss the upskilling and reskilling strategies, or what is needed to ensure that those strategies will allow young women to get in the digital train, I'd like to just indicate that the OECD is actually supporting Morocco and Egypt in data collection of gender sensitive data. And we definitely echo what was said by the previous panelists on the need for more data to better inform policy making. This being said, I'd like to really focus my short intervention on the digital sector. We all know that this is a booming one, and that's why I choose this topic. The key outcomes I'm going to present now are actually drawing on the regional dialogue we organized in July on gender sensitive education and skills development policies in the MENA region, developing girls' digital skills in the post-COVID-19 world. You can find the outcome document of this event online on the website if needed. And let me just say that this webinar is part of a series of regional dialogue on women, economic empowerment, and digitalization in MENA economies. The idea is really to gather more information on what works to ensure, again, women are part of this fourth revolution, benefiting and contributing to digital transformation. Let me, by the way, say that the next step of this regional dialogue of this series is for us to organize another webinar on Thursday, this time focusing on women's entrepreneurship. And this is organized by the MENA OECD Women's Economic Empowerment Forum, the WIF, that is a regional platform for policy dialogue, gathering government and non-government representatives from MENA and OECD economies. The idea is really to foster North-South dialogue, but also multi-stakeholder dialogue to exchange good practices and find solutions to support the implementation of policy reform and enhance women's economic empowerment in the MENA region. And empowerment is begins with having the right skills. So this program on skill mismatch, panel on skill mismatch is really timely because again, empowerment starts with having the right skills, then it moves to having job opportunities. And this is something that has been already discussed by the previous co-panelists, but I'd like to emphasize here again. So let me very quickly remind you the context. The COVID-19 is accelerating the adoption of digital technologies and transforming how businesses operate. I don't want to give you, to bother you with data, but we know that a digital age opens a lot of job opportunities. And this is also true for the youth and for women. Indeed, internet, digital platforms, mobile phones, digital financial services all have the potential to enable women to leapfrog over existing barriers. For example, by facilitating their access to learning, their skills strategies, development skills strategies, increasing their employment and entrepreneurship opportunities, and ultimately helping them accessing higher quality and better paid jobs. Let me give you just one number based on the McKinsey report showing that the share of women in professional and technical jobs is estimated to double by 2030 through digitalizations, online platforms, and entrepreneurship in the MENA region. So that's a good news to know that that digital transformation will create new jobs opportunities, new employment opportunities. The second good news is that women in the southern Mediterranean countries and eastern Mediterranean countries seem to have the potential to seize these opportunities. They are well engaged in STEM programs, for example, outperforming the OECD average. They are quite good in terms of digital skills, even if here again, we need to really know what we mean by digital skills, but at least with the data we have from PISA, the OECD program on skills and achievements, we see that in the MENA region, girls usually outperform boys. And this is something that is very important for girls to be engaged again in this digital train. Moreover, they do not lack confidence. And this is something that is really surprising because on average in OECD countries, girls are slightly more likely to be underconfident than boys. So all these things to say that young women and girls in the Middle East and or North African countries have the opportunities to really seize the new job opportunities brought by this acceleration of digital transformation. However, there is always a however. What we learned from our research, but also this dialogue on the skills development, is that this is not enough to have the right skills. And actually, we identified 3 barriers that are of interest for this particular conversation. Because we can keep investing in reskilling and upskilling strategies. However, what we really want to do is not only to provide women and girls with the right skills, but ensure also that those skills will allow them to fully integrate the labor market. And we actually identify again 3 main barriers to this school to work transition or training to work transition. First, this is the gender digital gap. And well, I have nothing to add here. This is quite obvious and everybody knows about this. I think the contribution I'd like to make is on the 2 next points. First, on career aspiration and gender stereotypes. We have seen gender differences in career expectations. And even the best women performers in mathematics and science, for example, do not favor careers in STEM or digital fields, despite being good. In Lebanon, for example, among students with high score in mathematics or science, over 46% of boys reported they want to be engaged in science and engineering profession or in digital jobs, including both as employees or as employers in the future. 46% of boys compared to 26% of girls only. So we can see that there are really deeply embedded gender stereotypes and so gender patterns in aspirations. So careers in digital, in the digital sector, for example, are usually associated with masculinity and defined as more appropriate for men. And this can lead to self-censoring that begins in school, in girls' childhood, for example, which influences their educational and career choices. So here again, providing them with the right skills is not enough to increase their employability if we are not tackling those stereotypes. Another very important contribution of this dialogue was about access to vocational education and training and apprenticeships. We have seen that in 2019, 4% and 6% of respectively young women and men were enrolled in VET in Arab states, 6 and 8% in Northern African countries. So you see that here we definitely have to invest more in VT and apprenticeships, as we know that they can ensure a greater first skill match with labor market needs, but also it facilitates school to work transition. And our colleague from UNDP remind us the high numbers of needs in the region. So we definitely need to look at that. Let me conclude very quickly, because I know I'm already over time, with the 5 priority policy areas we looked at to develop women and girls' digital skills and to increase, again, their employability in high productivity sectors. Among those 5 policies, is the need to promote women's digital literacy. So what we just said is that for sure, the lack of digital literacy skills is one of the main reasons women and girls are slower to utilize mobile internet and excluded from the financial, educational, social, and health resources of digital technology. We have heard about good practices to improve digital cultures at school in Morocco, for example, but also women's digital literacy in Egypt, for example, where the Federation of Egyptian Industry increasingly support women-led SMEs through, for example, the program Mahat Min Google in partnership with a training company, and they're trying to train them on essential digital skills, again, to allow them to expand new markets and connect with customers online. However, as I said, it's also important to tackle gender stereotypes. And here we have a very good example coming from Mexico with the Niña STEM Pueden initiative. this initiative launched in 2017 is really working with role model and trying to address stereotypes, not only among girls and boys students, but also their teachers, their parents. And by listening to the stories of STEM professionals, for example, girls, find inspiring role models and consider these professions as viable options for their future. So this is something that is very important. Of course, after talking about VET, we recommend countries to strengthen the public-private sector partnership. We need to engage the private sector in this upskilling and reskilling strategy. Otherwise, again, it will be very unlikely to reduce the skill mismatch. And finally, that there is, of course, a big point on using gender data. We need sex disaggregated data to better understand what are the barriers, but also what works. So this is something very important. And I like to conclude with this call for strengthening regional and multilateral cooperation. This remains a strategic tool to ensure, again, that those skill development strategy in the Mediterranean will allow young women to get in the digital train. So I'm really happy to be there today, and of course the OECD continues to stand ready to support countries in this journey and keep working with all of you, including the UFM, UNDP, UN Women, and IEMed. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Gael, for explaining the important contribution of the regional dialogue. I will now pass the floor to Mr. Monir Ghribi. But before doing that, I just want to remind you that we need to stick to 5 minutes as much as possible, especially because the last panelist of the second panel, Cristina Marota, she needs to leave at 12 sharp. So if we can make it on time, it would be great. So again, Mr. Monir Ghribi, he is the Director of International Cooperation, Communication, Skills Development and Research Promotion at the National Institute of Oceanography and Applied Geophysics, OGS in other words. And I would like to highlight that OGS is one of our cluster associated partners. And Mr. Monir will be sharing with us some reflections about the innovation employability nexus in the Mediterranean through their Blue Skills project. So Mr. Monir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I will do my best not to penalize the next speakers, of course. Thank you, Karina. Thank you very much for inviting us. And also, I'm very pleased to be here. So let me immediately start with the nexus. And of course, when we speak about innovation, you need to put three main components around the table: governance, the industry, and university, which we forget to do that. Look, in the university, for example, we often do beautiful things in developing countries, but we do not talk to a government. Sometimes with the industry, yes, just for internships for our students. This is the situation in countries, what we call middle income country. There is a kind of push and pull, but the, let's say, ideal situation if we could put them together to create this overlap. And this overlap is exactly this what we wanted: the innovation, the technological poles, the science parks, and so on. So this is the way how you valorize the research. So we need to talk to governance. And of course, we need to move from the labs to the market. And this from where comes the startups and spin-offs, and of course, entrepreneurships. So usually through the technological change, we have listened a lot of digital transformation. We have seen and we have listened all this morning about this trend of technological change. But unfortunately, the change is not well accepted in our countries. Sometimes you need to push people to lead this change. And this is also another aspect. So when you talk to industry, often you boost the innovation. And this is exactly what we need, to bring the skills that are needed by the industry, that are needed by the private sector. Of course, when you bring some skills, you create some gaps. is not a problem, and this is exactly what we need to do. We need to respond to society. It's what we call the societal challenges that we have been talking so much. So we need really to respond to our society needs. Often we fall in the what our government is dictating for us, what we call the top-down approach. And what we want to see is, of course, the bottom-up approach, where the industry also puts some elements, and the business and the public-private partnership is there. So creating trust is most important thing. We develop our strategy, national strategies, based on this nexus: energy, food, and water. Today, we have another element, which is health. We need to do that. Of course, all these aspects are related to this transformation, the digital transformation and the European Green Deal. We not forget also the Agenda 2030. So we put all this together, and we have a lot of opportunities. I usually say to my students, a sea of opportunities in the marine and maritime sectors. We have a lot of new technologies that we can use. We have a lot of funds put by the European Commission, but we need to take them towards promoting employment in our region. Of course, choosing the best career path, this is important, especially for women and youth. Unfortunately, we have seen that a lot of jobs will disappear, a lot of jobs will appear. We have seen the digital transformation. We moved from just simple discipline like physics, chemistry, to a multidisciplinary approach. And from here we come to the project. And immediately I go to the point. So the Blue Skills, this is a project, is a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary offer of training to our people in the Mediterranean. It has been labeled by the Union for the Mediterranean, which I really thank very much for that. So we have been also receiving, let's say, a lot of requests from 42 countries from the Union for the Mediterranean to create also synergies with the Med4Jobs initiative of the Union for the Mediterranean. We have been recently awarded the best project award just a few days ago, in 1 week ago, in 9th of November in Rome. So we received the best project award of the category Skill Development and Circulation. So what we are trying to do is to develop skills and to invest in youth, knowing that youth today, they have a high unemployment rate in both shores, in the northern shore, but particularly in the southern shore. I come from a country which is in the southern shore, Tunisia, and of course we suffer the unemployment rate, particularly for women. So we put all this together, thinking also that the Middle East and North Africa is one of the most, let's say, attractive country. We generate every year highly educated people, that they should not be a problem, but they should be an opportunity for the region. A region that offer a lot. You can see we have a lot of opportunities in this. We create 10% of the global GDP in the Mediterranean. So the money is there. What we need to do is to work on the blue skills. This project is built on the how you match the skills and jobs. And this is exactly what we wanted to do today. So the job I need needs me. Putting all the elements together, we create a training path from a simple summer school to an advanced master to a PhD, but also we try to create the political will. So 5 countries from the southern part of the Western Mediterranean Forum, together with the 5 countries from the northern part, what we call the dialogue 5+5, we put them around the table and they say yes for the dialogue. So we educate for dialogue, we create these opportunities, and we strengthen cooperation and research, innovation, and higher education. This is important because you receive the political will to promote entrepreneurship through declarations like Madrid Declaration, then Tunis Declaration, and of course, Rome Declaration in 2019. The summer schools, here are just some pictures. I will not take you so much in my talk. So these are the summer schools that in Trieste, we have trained 27 countries from the Mediterranean. We have a lot of people coming from Arab countries. We have a lot of women present in our summer schools. And then we move to a new formula, the master. The master degree, it's a university degree. We now did 4 editions of the master. You can see 43 women have been trained in the master since 2018. This is a path that is on-the-job training that we can create, also the possibility for people to come here in Trieste for 3 times. And of course, now, since the pandemic situation, we transform this to a digital format. So we try also to satisfy this request. Of course, we need to make them closer to the industry. So each time we put our students within the industry as job shadowing and internship. And we try also to make some training here in Trieste or in Sfax, for example, in Tunis, in Bizerte. And we create a kind of mobility program for those students following our activities in the Mediterranean, north, south, and south-south. Involvement of the youngest, and with this I conclude, these are our ambassadors. We need to involve children. Of course, through, as also our ambassador this morning was saying, upskilling and reskilling, thinking also about the vocational educational training, because schools are very important, but also we need to create awareness. Awareness comes also from the schools. We visit schools and we try also to make them closer, and we open the doors of the university and also the OGS to let them be more involved in our activities. So I conclude with this quote, saying that if you want to walk fast, walk alone, but if you want to walk far, walk with others. And this is exactly the real cooperation. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Munir, for this excellent presentation of the Blue Skills project. And I am sure we all agree that the Mediterranean is indeed a sea of opportunities. So thank you very much. I will now pass the floor to Magali Uters. Ms. Magali is team leader at the policy area, Regional Activity Center for Sustainable Consumption and Production. Ms. Magali, how could the SwitchMed initiative support the switch to circular economy in the Mediterranean?
Thank you very much, Karina, and I'm glad that I'm talking just after Munir, because I also wanted to convey some positive messages on opportunities. Now we know that there are some issues, but there is a wealth of opportunities that we need to explore. Yeah, I will talk from the SwitchMed initiative, so in which our center based in Barcelona is involved. So the SwitchMed initiative is a EU-funded initiative that is jointly implemented with UNIDO and UNEP. I won't enter into the details, but this initiative has a very strong components on the creation, on the support to green entrepreneurship. We have been working since 2014. We got some results like the creation. We supported the creation of 2,200 new businesses. So that ended with the creation of 1,000 green jobs. We did that through the development of training unique tools for training that are now available on an online platform that can be used by anybody, both by entrepreneurs and trainers. And this is something that I want also to offer to the cluster project. At the beginning, it was mentioned that it's a capitalization project, so we need to build on what is existing. So here I see very interesting bridges. The initiative also, SwitchMed also work on access to finance for green entrepreneurs, access to market, but also with a strong policy support component. And now we are in the phase also on created the national partnership with business support organization in the countries. Now we have a network of with nearly 97 business support organization engaged, because we need also to have proper ecosystems in the countries. So we are talking about, we are supporting 1,000 med countries. Under the initiative, we have tried also to gather, to showcase now all the initiatives that are existing now. So we created what we call the Switchers community. That is a community of change maker. We have now more than 300 cases of entrepreneurs that created their own initiative. Now we have many cases, most of the cases are under the resource efficiency and sustainable waste management, but so we have a lot of cases on food and agriculture, textile and clothing, clothing, cosmetics. So I think this is a very interesting platform to be inspired, no? Because I think one of my message will be that well, it is necessary now to convey the message that there are a lot of opportunities, in particular in circular economy, but we need to open the mind and to inspire people, no, so that they can see those opportunities, because now they are hidden, no, and we are not in a business as usual process, so we need to really raise awareness on those opportunities so that it can inspire people in the region. When we talk about, in our case, when we talk about sustainable enterprises, of course, there is the environmental component that is very, very important. But in our view, and how we define non-sustainable business, is a business that provides commercial solution, so that create ecological value or safeguard the environment. Of course, the economic, it should be economically viable, but it should be also socially empowering. So this is very, very important, because if we integrate this third pillar, we will have businesses that will support the improvement of youth and women. And I just would like to give like 2 examples. We recently celebrated the IEMed award that is rewarding sustainable business model in the region. And the 2 awardees were companies from the textile sector. So one is Fabricate, that is based in Lebanon, and basically that they are recovering clothes and selling those clothes to people with, well, at a very low price for people with very low purchasing power. And right now with this business, they are also employing more than 62 people from vulnerable community. So this is a great, I think, example on how we can, well, through the support to several businesses, we can work also on employment for youth and women. And we have also another case that is Green Fashion. It's a company based in Egypt, and they're also recovering clothes and they process them in order to sell them more at a higher price. But through this process, they also work with women, so they give them some artisan and training so that they can also work on with the company. So those business can really have, sustainable business can really have a role to play in the issues that we discuss today, and we will be happy to share our experience and find synergies with the cluster project. I will stop here because time is very limited. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Magali, and we would be very happy if we can find synergies for sure. Now, finally, we will pass the floor to Ms. Cristina Morota. Ms. Cristina is Senior Human Capital Development Expert and Coordinator for Active Labor Market Policies at the European Training Foundation. Ms. Cristina, could you please share with us, if you accept, of course, the new opportunities and key policy implications of skills mismatch and activation challenges in the Southern and Eastern Mediterranean countries?
Thank you, Karina. And really, I'll try to be very, very short also because we are out of time, but also I face some technical issues. Even here in Northern Italy, I have some connection problems. So yeah, challenges are everywhere. And actually this digitalization is posing a lot of challenges also on infrastructure. So quickly, the European Training Foundation, for those that maybe do not know us yet, we are an EU agency working on human capital development in the EU neighborhood countries and Central Asia. I have 2 topics to share with you today, but I will skip certain elements because all the previous speakers have already mentioned certain elements. There is one reflection I wanted to share already because we have several colleagues have mentioned data availability, relevance, and so on. And I would like to maybe share a kind of encouragement with all the colleagues working on labor market and skills data. In our opinion, we see that, of course, there are some certain gaps, but we also notice that certain data sets are insufficiently exploited. So it's a matter of encouraging to look at what is there and to use what is existing there. in terms of data availability. And another important point, for example, on assessing the skills mismatch incidents, is to use a number of sources, not only one source, one ad hoc survey, and so on. So this is a plea from our side, because depending on the angle you look at the skills mismatch or the source you use as for assessment, the outlook, the picture, the results are completely different. What we have recently done for most of our EU partner, ETF partner countries is to measure the skills mismatches incidence using the labor force surveys. So the surveys that are regularly implemented by statistical offices, because these are also accessible, feasible, and somehow also in terms of investments do not require a lot of money, let's say, yeah. What we noticed and we found out in several countries from CEMED, Tunisia, Palestine, Egypt, and Jordan, but this is across the board also in other countries, is that of course the people, workers with tertiary education level are more exposed to overqualification, so they are working in jobs below their level. Unfortunately, in CEMED countries and in other EU neighborhood countries, this incidence is extremely worrying. What is more worrying is also this horizontal mismatch. So people that are working in occupation completely different from the field of study, their graduation. And in certain countries, this mismatch incidence reaches 80%. So there is one single conclusion. Upskilling, reskilling, skills development, lifelong learning, these are essential. Otherwise, we cannot talk about sustainable employment. Then the second part of my plea here is about the effectiveness and innovation in the active labor market policies. We are dealing with a completely different labor market, be it the digital and greening transition, be it the new opportunities, but also how COVID and pandemic shaped the labor market and also changed the consumer patterns, yeah, the production patterns. We see the energy crisis and so on. Therefore, our recommendation is to really look properly in the design of the active labor market measures, but most importantly, to build evidence on the effectiveness of ALMPs. Because what we've noticed over the last 2-3 years, the recommendations that we would have given you 3 years ago are not anymore valid, because youth, young people, women, and other vulnerable groups face completely new, different challenges, but also they have completely new expectations. So I conclude here. I thank you very much for this opportunity and good luck with this excellent and interesting project.
Thank you very much, Ms. Christina. We will make sure to keep your pleas and the recommendations in mind while implementing our project. Thank you again. I was checking the Q&A chat box. There are no more questions. All of them have been answered. I don't know if you have more things to ask or to comment on. Otherwise, we are already well over time. So I don't want to keep you any longer. Okay. So we really appreciate you being here today, and thank you very much for taking the time to present and to share all your very important insights, which are really useful for implementing our project, as I said a while ago to Ms. Christina. I would only like to remind you about the evaluation form that will appear on your screens once you close the event. We would appreciate it if you could take the time to fill it. It's an anonymous evaluation. Thank you very much again, and we hope to get in touch again very soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.